Good morning, everybody. This is Jim Benson, and we're here today to talk about the 6 P's of time management. And these are just six P's. I'm sure you can come up with more and more letters and more descriptions, but we're going to just talk about 6 of them today. So using personal Kanban to manage your time, get your work on track. So a little bit about me. I'm Jim Benson. Many of you might have listened to some podcasts earlier, so forgive me if you've heard this before, but I started off my career in psychology and then in urban planning. I liked to build big things, subway systems, cities, freeways, things with multi-billion-dollar price tags. Then I started a software company. I ran that for about 10 years, and while doing that, kind of invented personal Kanban and lean coffee and a couple of other things. And those things became so compelling because they mixed together all of the things that I really liked to do. I liked to build communities, and I liked to help people, and I liked to make things less stressful, and good things like that. So I wrote some books, like to eat some food, and I wrote most of those books with my business partner and now I can say actually longtime collaborator, Tony Ann DeMaria Berry. She came from the fashion industry, and she's a trained historian, understands the mechanics of things like supply chains and whatnot, but also understands the nuances, what taste is and what culture is and how ideas and people not only evolve but aren't always what they seem to be. And right now she's working hard as I am, looking at how what we do impacts us as people. How much we are impacted by the culture in our work, the type of work that we're getting, the makeup of what we do every day, and how that impacts us as people, and then in turn how we can create systems at work that make things better for people, so they get their job done, and not only do they get their job done, but they enjoy doing it, so it's a win for everybody. And in essence, I was going to talk about about modus cooperandi, our company, but that is in essence what we do. We come into companies that want to get control of their work, that feel overwhelmed, or people are frustrated, and we help them calm that frustration, figure out the appropriate amount of work for people to get or to give, help the companies make better decisions based on what the true capacity of people are, and good stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing it. We've also noticed recently that a lot of the teams that we're working with are distributed. They're in different countries and stuff. So we built Modus Institute, which brings you today's webinar. And we have some classes up there right now, one in distributed teams themselves and another in personal Kanban. And if you stick around to the end of the presentation today, I will give you a nice discount code so that you can go and join in on these classes. One thing about the classes that we do is you can go and you can just view the videos like other online schools, or you can come to our bi-weekly, what we call lab sessions, where we discuss with each other. So Tony Ann and I are there, but as are other students, and we talk about issues that people are having with their distributed teams or their work and how they're getting around them. And they are a blast. I love doing them. So we'll get started here. So I want to get you inspired right away. So Stephen King said this, basically, if you sit around and wait for inspiration to happen, it's never going to show up. So you kind of have to get up and go to work and see what happens and find inspiration in what you do and how you're doing it. So we all want kind of the same thing. We want to be able to finish things so that we can see a product. We want to know that we did a good job when we built that product. We want to find flow, which is when you kind of get into something and you're rolling and you feel good about what you're doing. We want to be able to build systems that encourage that don't say, you're going to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. So if you're on like project A and project B and project C and you're doing some marketing and you have to go to these other meetings and keep track of this other stuff, and when you start to spread yourself out like that, you can't build flow And when you don't build flow, you as a human being aren't very efficient. So we would like to do that. This isn't just a touchy-feely flow. This is like serious stuff. If you keep being interrupted, if you have no flow, you're not going to get anything done, and you're not going to do a good job, which means you're not going to be rewarded for it, because who's going to reward doing, a not good job? And reward is both intrinsic and extrinsic. We do like other people to come up and give us a pat on the back and say, that was awesome, or here's, extra, $2.5 million for being awesome or whatever. But we also like to be rewarded by ourselves of saying, I feel awesome as a professional about what I just did. And in order to do that, we actually have to have some control of our time. And so, David Byrne, always smart, intelligent guy, he's saying here that we aren't actually prisoners of time. It isn't out to get us. All of the stuff that we're doing now, in one way or another, has been done before. We as people actually do know how to have a good life. We actually do know how to get work done. We actually do know how to finish things. We get in our own way, and then we blame a lack of time for that. So what we want to do in time management primarily is say, what problem is it that we're trying to solve when we actually sit down to do our work? And that doesn't mean the task, it also means in how we are putting our task into our current context so that we can get it done. So time management isn't a thing. It is highly contextual, okay? And so what we want to do is we want to say, okay, look, there's a lot of different ways that our time management, works. So we can be in a situation that asks us to plan, where we have to say, what am I going to do today? Or we have to be in a situation that says, what is it that I need to produce? How can I produce something? How can I actually get the work done? Another is we can search around for options. What are the things that we should be doing in the future? We could be plowing through something. We're in some sort of emergency and we just have to blast through it. We could have to ponder. We have a thinky problem and we have to really ponder it in order to solve it right. We have to learn while we're working. Or we could be in a situation where we've just got to get a bunch of stuff done. We've got a huge backlog or a huge set of options that we could do. How can we group those so that, again, we are not spreading ourselves out, we're able to achieve some flow? So these are kind of 6 different ways that we can view time management. So let's start off here with number 1, with planning, and that's today. We'll start off with our inspirational quote here from Mother Teresa. And if Mother Teresa doesn't inspire you, you probably are uninspirable. So she said this, that we can't mourn the past. The future isn't here yet. The only time we ever have to work is in the present, in this eternal present. And so what we want to do is we want to say, okay, the problem here is, what am I expecting from myself right now? And what can I actually promise other people? How can I, deliver what it is that I would like to deliver to other people? So here we have, our normal, everyday, ordinary personal Kanban with some options over here and some stuff that we're doing and some stuff that we've completed. It looks like we've been pretty busy, huh? So we've got that done. And we've got our today column. And this is where, since the very beginning of Personal Kanban, we've been talking about a today column. It's a simple column where we basically say, what are the things that I think that I can get done today? So right now, what is it I can get done before I go home from the office? Or if it's a Saturday, what can I get done before I decide that I don't want to do anything more on a Saturday? So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, these are my personal goals for today, and these are the things that I think that I can promise to other people, right? So we're doing 2 things here. We are saying, over the course of the day, I, as Jim Benson, understand that there are things that I want to do. I also understand that there are things that others want me to do. And those 2 things may be coordinate and they might not. But what I don't want to do is get in a situation where I'm either letting myself or other people down, right? So I want to be able to populate this column of stuff with stuff that I know I can finish. not stuff I'd like to finish. This isn't the I wish today column. This is the, today column. Today, I'm going to get this done right now. So what we want to say is, okay, well, so we've just started this column. Here's some stuff that we're working on right now. So we finish this, and then we pull something in, and then we work on it, and then we pull something else in, and we finish this, and then we go into a meeting, and then we go into another meeting, and then we go to lunch, and then we come back and we'll pull this over as well. And now we're working on these two things. We're plugging away on them. And then all of a sudden we get a phone call, and we get an email, and somebody stops by our desk, and then we finish this. And by the end of the day, our board looks like this. So we had the best of intentions. We picked out an amount of work that we could totally get done today if we worked in a vacuum, but we don't. So we know that there are always interruptions. So we originally pulled 5 things over here. One of them didn't get done, but got started, and 2 of them didn't even get started. So we know tomorrow, if we really want to promise people something, we might want to scale back. So tomorrow we might just leave those there. Maybe add, one more in there for tomorrow, right? And then the next day comes by, and we do something like this, and we say, aha, okay, it's the end of the day. I know that I can kind of promise people things, about 3 things a day. And that the rest of the day I have interruptions and things like that, and that's okay, because that's part of my work. It's not like I can't work in my company all by myself. I actually do have to go to work. But what we do is we say, okay, now I understand that I can only put so many things in this column, which also means that we're much more conservative, in the truest sense of the word, with our promises now. When we promise things to other people, we know that we actually have a capacity of promises. And if we make the right amount of promises, then we don't have to break them. The more promises we don't break, the more we keep our word, the more our social capital comes up, and everything is fine. So the goal here, it says at the bottom, isn't to run a project. It isn't to make everybody happy. The goal here is just to plan your time today in the most realistic way possible. Okay, so let's plan. All right, let's move on to produce. So producing, we want to complete things. Now, this quote is not inspiring, unless you like to be inspired by being admonished. But in this quote, I mean, even when I was a teenager, right, this quote just strikes fear into your heart, right? You're so caught up in life, and you're so caught up in the things that are happening day to day, that you miss out on the big picture, and you get to the end of that decade, or you get to the end of that period of time, and you're like, crap, I didn't do, that thing. So we want to actually, and that's true for huge life goals. We're not going to talk about that today, but let's just talk about this on more of a micro scale. And here what we're saying is, in order to do that, in order to get to the end of that decade and not say, oh, I missed the starting gun, we say, okay, look, what things can I pull that are, yes, the best use of my time, but the best use of my time isn't necessarily following the tyranny of the urgent. The best use of my time is, what can I actually get done? What can I actually finish, right? So what we don't want to do is we don't want to keep sitting there saying, oh my God, they want, Bob wants this and Susan wants that, and there's this emergency and that emergency and so forth. All that does is overload us, and it makes sure that everything eventually becomes an emergency. So what we want to do instead, we'll go back to the board here, and we'll, for simplicity's sake, remove the today column, is we want to say, okay, so right now I come in the morning and I say, all right, this is absolutely the Jones staff kickoff thingamabob is absolutely the most important thing that I get going on. So I get to my desk and I write this huge document in Google Docs, and then I send it off to the Jones staff saying, okay, so let's meet later today and let's talk about this document. And then I get back an auto reply saying, hey, the Jones staff is all on vacation until, 2019. And so, please call us back then. So now what happens is I've started this but I'm not able to finish it. It was urgent, but I'm not able to finish it. So it isn't just urgency and importance that drives what we're pulling. It's, can we finish this thing, right? So what we do is we look over here and we say, okay, this is important and this is important and this is important, but oh, you know what? I can actually complete this task. So I'm going to grab that one and I'm going to complete it, right? And I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to complete it. And so by the end of the day, I've actually completed things versus, pulling all of these things in, which maybe I would pull in. Oops. Sorry about that. I don't know how I thought that it does. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? That's better. Anyway, so had a little tool fail there. So we don't want to pull in work that's just going to sit here and gum things up so that we can't finish them. But what we do want to say is, I can finish these. I'm definitely going to pull them. And these are other important ones here. Like, so this one is, why does it keep saying that 3 is not 2? All right. Well, all right. So there, it definitely thinks that 2 is 3. So we want to say that, Jeff is in the office today. So this is a task where I have to actually collaborate with Jeff. Maybe it's not the most important thing, but I know that that guy is available. So I want to be able to say I and he can work together to finish this thing. Maybe it's not the most urgent, maybe it's not the most important, but I know that he's going to go on vacation, or he works from home a lot and he's only here every so often. This is the only time we have in front of a whiteboard. Anything like that, we want to grab that and we want to work with it. Okay. So there. So our goal here is to actually understand our options and understand the impediments, not just that we have as people, but understand the impediments that are there as the ticket, right? And so our goal here isn't, obviously, I mean, the goal is obvious, right? We don't want to start a lot of things. We actually want to finish a lot of things. So urgency and important are both urgent and they're important. But if you can't finish those things, starting them doesn't make any sense, right? Oops. You got a little happy there with the button. So the third one is prospecting. So we want to be able to go off and find options, and we can't make work something that it isn't, right? So when we're given a task and that task looks a little funky, what we don't want to do is we don't want to say, I'm going to go off and I'm going to force this task to work. We're going to go off and we're going to say, what options do I truly have? So we'll go back over here and we'll say, like, right now, we'll move this over. So right now, I'm going to take this task and say, research, market growth, or no, I'm sorry, the other way. Somebody says, the Balinese market for personal Kanban's really fallen off and we need it to come back again. It's like, oh, you know what? It must be the splash page. So I'm going to go spend 2 or 3 days beating my head against making a better Balinese splash page. And so I do that and I do that and I do that and I do that and I do that. And it turns out that that actually wasn't the right solution. It wasn't the root cause of the problem that we were having with sales in Bali. So instead of taking a look at that, perhaps what I want to do is prospect. I want to say, all right, I am going to research market growth in Bali. So I say, okay, well, I've done some research and I find out that right now there's actually a problem in Bali where there's a little bit of political unrest. So I'll make an extra ticket for that. And next time I'll try to fix something rest. There we go. And I might go in there and I might say, okay, well, actually, there might be a problem where the currency is unstable. And so, whatever those things are, what I'm doing now is I'm starting to build a backlog for me to actually do more research instead of just guessing that it was the splash page. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually saying, okay, you know what? I need to understand the actual context of my work. I can't just do what someone else told me to do, because you know what? They're wrong just as often as I am. So we can't act until we understand the context of our work, and we can't understand the context of our work unless we have a little domain knowledge and we focus on discovery. So our goal here isn't, blindly follow the backlog and do whatever's in that column and always just do it and don't think for yourself. The goal is look into that column, ask yourself, are the things that I'm doing right now important? Are they real? Are they actually going to solve a problem? Is it the right work? And if it's not, to create new options that are. Okay. You can't manage your time well if you're doing the wrong work. That's that simple. All right. Number 4 is plowing, is blasting through. So plow. And so Dr. Seuss, also a leader in the fashion industry, if you read his books, had the quote, "How did I get so late so soon? Doing a good job, I'm plugging away, I'm doing what I'm supposed to. How did I get so far behind? And it seems like no time at all has passed, yet it's almost time to deliver this thing." Okay, so we've worked ourselves in one way or another into an emergency. We've worked our way into a crisis where there is a looming deadline, and we now have to meet that looming deadline. And so what we're asking ourselves here is, how much of the stuff that I have to get done can I do before this crisis ends? And you have to ask yourself a difficult question, which is like, what corners can I safely cut? So this is true for all emergencies, right? You cannot do utmost quality work while under stress, and especially under deadline stress. But what we can do is we can figure out, okay, what are the components of the things that need to be done in order to get through this crisis? And what of those things can I delegate on? Which of those things do I, as an individual, need to focus on? And what things do I need to work on with other people? So let's take a peek at plow. So here we have something horrible has happened, and so I have stuff here that are things that only I can do. They have the special gym wisdom that for some reason or another only I can touch. So I have set those aside for me. There are other things that need to be done, and there's usually a lot of them. There are other things that need to be done that I can delegate to other people. I can say, you guys go handle that, because that's something that either uses their expertise or it's something that can be done by anybody. And the problem is that oftentimes what we'll do is we'll look at work in a domain and we'll say, I am the expert of that domain, and so I have to do all that work. And we see this in companies all the time, where we have a database expert, or we have a claims processing expert, or we have a head nurse that is totally has been in the ward forever and knows absolutely everything about that ward. And that person, those people will take over tons of tasks that could be delegated, but because they're attached to their expertise, they come attached to them, and then no one else learns anything, right? So we want to be able to keep track of what's difficult, the things that only I know, and the easier tasks or tasks that anybody can handle. We want to send them out. So here we've got tasks that are just for me, tasks that I've sent off to John or Tony Ann, and then over here are tasks that maybe these are a little bit more difficult. Maybe these are tasks that we all have to think about, because this is like actually solving the problem that created the emergency. This over here, probably the busy work of the emergency, but over here is actually the problem solving. And so we will collaborate on that problem solving, because it is ridiculously important for us to get more than one viewpoint while we are solving problems. One person creates one solution, 2 people create many solutions, and 3 or more create just a ridiculous number of potential solutions. So you get to look at many more options over here, and the more options you have, the better the option you pick will be. So in plow, which is like We are going to get all of this work done, and we're going to stay all night long, and we're going to get it done. The only way we can do that is to set it up so that you yourself or individuals are doing the least amount of work necessary to get that work done, and that no one person is personally overloaded. Now, I've got 3 things here, John's got 3 things here, Tony Ann's got a couple of things here. Otherwise, maybe that whole thing would be under my column, which would obviously, break my WIP limit. So, usually emergency is just like a huge line of panic, right? All right, so we're moving right along to number 5, and number 5 is ponder. Think about it. All right, so you've got something that you're about to do, and do you have to think about it? Maybe you're making a webinar. You just don't want to throw it together. You want to actually ponder it. You want to think about it. You want to make it nice. Maybe you're planning a party for somebody. Maybe you're building a new product. Maybe you're trying not to get fired. I don't know, but you're thinking and you're pondering something, all right? And this is a different type of task. And David Allen here is saying basically our brains are really good at having ideas. And we're really actually good at following logic trains, right? So we think we have our original idea, and then we learn a little bit, and then we learn a little bit more, 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 and we go on and on and on with that. And then in the end, we have this final package, and then we take that final package to people and say, here, and what they get is, the final package. They get the car, or they get the house, or they get, the final product of whatever it is, but they don't see all of the ideas and the learning that went into that. Not so bad for customers, really, really damaging for you and your company if you don't hold on to the ideas that you have along the way so that other people can see how you went on this journey of learning. So pondering isn't only about thinking about and finding the best way to do something, but it's also about remembering what you did, how you came up with that. Because you can't be a learning person or a learning organization without remembering the path of learning. And the brain does this really nasty trick to us, which is called apostle syndrome, is that when we learn something new, we kind of convert to it. So like converting to a new religion. And once we do that, we really can't remember what life was like before we knew the new information, right? So it's a problem because we will learn and we actually don't realize that we're learning. And then we either become frustrated with others because they don't know it, or we keep acting like everybody does know it. And maybe they know what we've told them to know, but they don't know why. They don't know how this knowledge came to be. So what we want to do is both take time to solve these problems, and then we also want to, take notes. So if we go back over to the board here really quickly, and we'll deplow, and we will engage the pondering. What I like to do, and what we've worked with clients to do, and is probably wouldn't be in your digital Kanban, but that's how we're talking today. But on a table, we would build a board, or basically a visual control, and in it we would write down notes. We'd write down things to discuss with other people. We'd write down areas of future research, and then specific learning, specific epiphanies, specific ideas, specific things that change the direction of the narrative of the thing that we're building inside our heads. Because whenever we set out to build something, whenever we set out to do something, we set out to do it in a way that makes sense. And people make sense through stories. I have a mouse, and that mouse moves back and forth and forward, and it clicks on things, and it itself is its own little story. It has a definition, it has things that it does, and I know how that works. If I'm building that, I know I'm going to put the pieces together in a certain way, and that it has an order. right? So when we solve problems, when we build things, we build a story about them in our heads, and then we seek to get that story done. And like with almost any other story, there are plot twists. There are things like, I was going to do that, and oh, that's not a very good idea. So we want to be able to remember that those things happened. One of the things that I'll mention about this, we talk about this in Lean Coffees, and we talk about this in Kaizen camps a lot, is adults really don't like to learn. And the reason is because it's not very comfortable for us to learn. You know, it might be fun to like see interesting, non-threatening things from time to time, but often what's happening in learning is our brain has been conditioned to think about something in a certain way, and then something comes along and says, no, that way is wrong, or that way is limited, or that way isn't the whole way you can think about it. Here's a bunch of new stuff. And that changes our worldview. And that's something that we are resistant to. So we're actually resistant to learning as we get to be adults. So if you're ever having a conversation with somebody, or you're working on stuff yourself, and something either annoys you or it makes you laugh, then grasshopper, you will have learned. We have emotional reactions to learning. Learning actually isn't a rational response. It's a emotional response. So what we want to do is we want to take time to solve things and not necessarily rush out to finish a task, but to capture the learning that we're doing so that we can convey it to others. Companies for years have wanted to be learning organizations, and they've been really lousy at it because learning is actually quite voluminous and it is ethereal. So it's tons of it that happens all the time, and it's happening in little wisps in people's brains. So it's difficult to capture, it's difficult to take down, and it's difficult to rebuild a narrative that is going to interact with other people. One of the things that's nice to do is after you go through a session like this, where you have learned a bunch of stuff, it might not be a bad idea to actually get some other people from the company and sit down with them and have a lean coffee and use your learnings as the options column for that lean coffee. Like nobody writes anything down, but they look at your learnings and they're like, that's weird, I want to hear about that. And then that gives you a chance to talk about it, but it gives you a chance to talk about those concepts, not just in your context, but in the context of all the other people that come to you for that, or come to participate in that lean coffee or in that meeting. And that's important because then as you, as the learner, you'll actually see those learnings interacting with other people's contexts and worldviews, and that gives you an even deeper understanding of the thing that you just thought you understood. Okay, so we come up here to the last one. Doing quite nicely for time here. You all should notice that on the right side there is a questions column, and I just want to make sure that people are asking questions as we go along, because I know I'm going through this kind of fast, but here we go. The last P, pigeonholing. So we want to pigeonhole like tasks, and there's only one person on earth that's probably ever been more sacred or holy than Mother Teresa, and that would be Bert. And you know, I'm just totally programmed by being a child of the Muppets. So every time I see the word pigeon, I think of Bert dancing the pigeon. So there's your inspirational quote for Pigeonhole. So pigeonholing, this is what we're doing, is you have a brain, I hope, and I suspect you have a brain. It is statistically probable that you have a brain. And what happens is if we come to work today, and like I said earlier, we work on a bunch of different crap from a bunch of different projects at the same time, project A, project B, we're being interrupted by all these people, we can't get anything out, we will be exhausted by noon. We will burn out early in the day because we are context switching so much. And so there's two things here that we can do. The first is we will use something called the Pomodoro technique, which I think many of you have heard us talk about before. Pomodoro is Pomodoro. And you can Google it by a guy named Francesco Cirillo. And what it does is it basically says, look, I want you to pigeonhole some time. I want you to say, I want you to do a small batch of work in 25 minutes. Don't let anybody bug you for 25 minutes, and just do it. Do the thing, right? Focus on the thing and do it. And you'll be shocked, like ridiculously shocked at how much work you can get done in 25 minutes. It's insane. Then after the end of the 25 minutes, you rest a bit. So that what happens is your brain kind of processes information in about 20-minute chunks or so. And so if you blast all the way through the day and you don't take any breaks, what ends up happening is you just keep rewriting your short-term memory. You don't commit much to long-term memory, and you don't give your brain a break so that it can bounce back and be all of its spongy, brainy goodness for the next phase. So we do 25 minutes of work, and then we get up and we actually physically walk around, like walking, like, or if you're in a wheelchair, rolling, but you move around, because that's how our brains evolved. We evolved by saying, we'll think about this, and then we'll run around, and we'll think about it, and so we'll run around. And what's happening is you're giving oxygen to your brain, which it likes, and you're giving your brain a little bit of a break, because it's hard to stare at your computer while you're walking around, unless you have a walking desk, which kind of might be insidious now that I think about it. Okay, so the second thing, which we'll go over to the board again. Oops. Which we'll go over to the board again. And in the Pigeonhole board, we have here 3 silly but potential groups of tasks. And they might not all be in the same project, but they are like, these are all accounting tasks. So we have basic accounting and number accounting and chocula accounting, and there's no accounting for taste accounting. And we have all of these here. And so what I know is that I'm going to focus on accounting for a couple of Pomodoros, and I'm going to blast this stuff out, right? And as I'm doing that, what's happening is I'm allowing my brain to stay in this domain, which makes things much easier for me because I'm not context switching, okay? And that means that I will, feel better by the end of the day. Tony Ann likes to tell the fortunately true story that when we were working on the Personal Kanban book, we lived in different time zones. There were 3 hours between us. And so Tony Ann would get up around 8 o'clock in the morning, which means I'd get up around 5, and we would start working. And we'd be working and working and working and working and working. And it would be awesome because we were working on this book, and we loved the book, and we loved working together, and it was so fun, and everything was awesome. And then at some point, usually 7 or my time, like 6 or 7 p.m., I always say, Tony Ann, you got to stop and go eat dinner. And she's like, no, let's go. And I was like, no, it's 10 p.m. in Washington, D.C. You should eat. It's actually important to eat. And the reason was because we were in flow, and we were in flow because all of our work actually was very pigeonholed. It was all about personal Kanban. We were always focused on the same parts of the book together. We actually wrote in the same paragraphs at the same time, with the words all moving around in Google Docs. It was a wonderful experience, but it was totally flow. Now we have this company, and companies have a great way of like screwing up your flow, right? So they we do have to do marketing, and we do have to build these webinars and classes online, and write new books, and do public speaking and work with clients and all those things. And so we end up now being pulled in many different directions. Ironic, right? So we've had to very, very studiously stick to a lot of these P's. We'll go back up and look at the P's again really quick. We've had to very studiously stick to these, because if we didn't, we would constantly be in situations where we would always be, again, under the tyranny of the urgent. And there's always things, there's always somebody that's like pushing at you to get that one thing done. And so don't let them do that. You're better than that, right? Go past Bert here again, and we'll close up with this last slide just to remind everybody, we are here because we want a better life. We want a better world. And that doesn't mean that we want to retire and sit on a beach and drink alcohol. It means that we actually do want to be awesome professionals that help the world, that help ourselves, and that we're able to give people the support that they need. They're able to give us the support that we need, and that we can build, systems to do that. We can't do that if we're overloaded or if we're not managing our time well, because we only get a precious amount of that time. And every minute we don't spend time, we invest it. So what are you going to invest your time in tomorrow? So with that, that's the webinar. Please do, it says personal Kanban class here, but you can sign up for any personal Kanban or anything on the Modus Institute site, any product that's up there right now with the webinar 20 code. Very much appreciate you listening today, and look over here and see what questions there are. And I'm sorry that the nature of these things is that I have to do that. So the first question here is from Barry. And it's do you move those clouds from plow to doing or options? And the answer is yes. Yeah, so the cloud, I'll go back over there really quick into the plow board. So basically what I was doing with these was this would definitely be our options column for that emergency. And but the key here is that while ordinarily an options column for a team for us would look like this, where things are not delegated, in an emergency we find it helpful to delegate because it's an emergency. So we could be purists and say, oh no, never delegate and always let people pull. But what happens is, even if you put these in a pool, like even if this instead of said delegate, even if it said John or Tony and they could pull it, what that immediately helps is, in the emergency, make it as clear as possible who should or could do those particular tasks. Because when so we've done some work, I did work both as an urban planner and consulting engineer, and as a process consultant on helping emergency operation centers that deal with floods and tornadoes and other bad things that happen to people. When they're dealing with an emergency, they have, like, literally every second could save a life. So they don't have any time to waste with people saying, what should I do now? Or can we have a planning meeting? They don't have time for that. So what we try and do is set up systems like this that give either the person or the people that should or could do those tasks. Okay, so number 2 from Simon. I notice you're using LeanKit. Do you find this better than Trello for managing personal Kanban? The answer to that question is that the best tool for personal Kanban is going to be the tool that you're actually going to use. We use LeanKit a lot, and we use it for presentations like this for a very good reason, and that's that I can do this. And I can't do that with almost anything else. But the other thing is that Trello is not actually a Kanban tool. Trello is a bunch of cards on a wall. So if you're going to use Trello, make sure that it, like LeanKit here, says, hey, you're exceeding your WIP limit. Don't do that. So there is a plugin in Trello that will allow you to do that. There are other plugins in Trello that will allow it to be allow it to that will allow it to be more powerful than it is. So it's great as a shell. But I do have to mention that that we have now officially, I guess I can say, lost count of how many online Kanban tools there are. And I think that the day I realized that I'd fully lost count was when we signed up for a new CRM, a new customer records management system. And that CRM, when we opened it up, unbeknownst to us, ran on a very, very sophisticated Kanban system. Totally awesome. Never talked to us about it. We just bought it and we're like, hey, look what we got. So so they're everywhere. So what I would say is that, you know, we definitely, we love LeanKit. We've seen many people run well on Trello, and that would be the answer to that. The last question is, should there be a WIP limit, also from Simon, a WIP limit on the today column? I'll toss a bunch of stuff back over here. And the answer to that is no, because we want to be wrong. So we want to come in that first day and say, all right, I'm going to get these 5 things done. And then at the end of the day, you know, it looks like this, and I know that I only got 3, or I only got 2.5 of those things done. I want to be able to see that so that over time, when I come in, I start to promise myself that I'm only going to be doing as many things as I can actually finish. So this column itself is an experiment. And it's a very important experiment because our time management eyes are always bigger than our time management stomach. We will always think we can do more work than we actually can. It comes from something called the planning fallacy. It's a well-known, well-documented cognitive bias. It's governed by something called Hofstadter's law. And Hofstadter's law said that human beings will underestimate every complex task, even if they are aware of Hofstadter's law. So we can't help but underestimate the amount of effort that we're going to put into a task. So we want to have this visual system up here all the time saying, don't do that. You can only put a couple things in here, and you know that because you've watched time and time again yourself be disappointed because you weren't able to get the stuff that you wanted. All right, so those were awesome questions. Thank you. And the recording of this should be up fairly soon. You know, some of these webinars go really well. I think this is one of them. So this one will probably go up pretty quickly. And thank you all for attending. Again, I really hope to see you in the classes and maybe to talk to you in person, because in those gold calls we do, you know, talk one-on-one and or at least in a group, and it is so much fun to meet everybody. So thank you all, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.